Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another one of our live hangout panels from the JeopardyFan.com. Once again, I'm Andy Saunders. I will be moderating tonight's discussion. And first of all, a welcome to tonight's panel. I would normally cut it to Jeannie here, but she's cutting in and out. She's having some technical issues with her video, so do know she is here, and she will be joining us and talking when she can. Our other panelists, a big welcome back to some of our regulars. First of all, from J Archive and J Board, David Kendall. Welcome back, David.
Hello.
We also have a regular panelist and former champion, Ben Ingram. Welcome back, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And a couple of new panelists. First up, Dan Tran. He won a game a couple of weeks ago, and he'll have some interesting insights for us, I'm sure. Welcome, Dan.
Hi.
And probably one of the more prominent guests we've had on the panel so far. She won 20 games last season. A big welcome to Julia Collins. Welcome. Thank you for being able to join us, Julia.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I guess we can get right started in terms of news outside of the Jeopardy to start off with. Former panelist Alex DeFrank in the world of sports Jeopardy, he still leads that standings with 22,001 points. The winner only ended up with about 10,000 last week, so he still leads after 5 of 50 episodes in the race for the top 3 there. Former 3-time champion Megan Barnes, she won $6,200 on Wheel of Fortune this past week. And finally, I guess we can open with this topic for discussion, just because I think Alexander Persaud may be coming on later, and I want to talk about his a little bit later on. But Ken Jennings looks like he's going to be appearing on Millionaire November 14th. I saw an advertisement for that recently. Ken Jennings on Millionaire. Good idea or bad idea? What do we think?
It's definitely a good idea for the show. Oh, go ahead, David.
It's a no name, so gets people watching. I'm sure it helped when he was on, what, 5th Grader and whatever else he was on, can't remember. But people know him.
He was on 1 versus 100 as well. Ben, you had something to say?
I think it's good for the for the show. I hate that in some markets it airs opposite of Jeopardy because that's the time that the Tournament of Champions is going to be on. I'm not going to say it's disrespectful or anything. I know Ken Jennings wants the record back, but you know, there's so much esoterica on that show. It's not really in a canon that you might see in something like Quiz Bowl, Jeopardy, whatever. He might win 100K, but heck, he might go all the way. But I'll admit it'll be interesting to see. But I'm going to be watching Tournament Champions.
It will. Fortunately, it doesn't air opposite Jeopardy where I am, so I may be able to watch both. Remember, though, that nobody actually has beaten Millionaire in America in 10 years, so it should be interesting to see whether or not he's able to move along. Let's see. I think we can move on to talking about the week a little bit. If Alexander joins us later on, we can go back to his a little bit, but one thing I noticed for sure the past week, he definitely seemed to have a couple of really good games, and then he kind of lost it on the buzzer on Wednesday. I guess for the people who are on the show, is the buzzer that fickle that it could be lost that easily?
My experience is no.
That's for sure.
All for me, just every time I was on, but I think that's atypical.
Who did he lose to in that game? Allie, was it? Or?
Yes, I believe it was Allie.
Allie Palmer.
Yes, Allie Palmer defeated him. Though I think Allie won because she was the only one to get Final Jeopardy as well that game.
That's exactly right.
That's all the facts. Yes.
Actually, I found that final quite interesting. I didn't realize I got it, but I didn't realize that Baffin Island was in fact the largest island named after a person.
What do you think it was?
I didn't. It's never something I really considered. But when I thought about large islands named after people, that Baffin Island made perfect sense to me once I thought it through. But I never really thought about that before.
Same here. I'm a geography nut, but it never occurred to me that Baffin was named after somebody. Yeah, I'm a geography nut and a Canadian, so 2 points for me. But it just didn't click for me. But that's what makes a good Final Jeopardy clue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with exploration that took place and takes place in high latitudes. So I knew who, I think, was it Sir John Baffin, Liz?
Yeah, it was.
She goes, yeah, it was. But that was, I think that was instant for me, wasn't it? Yeah, because you shouted out that one yesterday before I'd even had a chance to look at it, so I'm mad about that. I got to shout this one out this time before she had a chance to look.
It was the first island I could think of named after a person, and I couldn't come up with anything better. So
that's pretty good. That's the first island you think of is named after a person.
Well,
I thought Tasmania was an okay guess, but it's not terribly large.
I thought that was think about that.
It's pretty small. Abel Tasman.
Yep, I don't think Tasmania was a terrible guess, to be honest, either.
Yeah.
But that was the kind of the final that fell. Alexander wasn't really nearly as dominant his first two as his first two games, which kind of leads me to another thing. In his Tuesday game, Elizabeth hit a daily double. I believe she had 4,400. Alexander had 18,200 at that point, and she kind of bet a little too small, in my opinion, just $2,000. Do we think that might have been, or that might be a cautionary tale to say have a plan going in, or do we think that she might have been spooked by seeing Frederick and Emma losing big sums on daily doubles the day before?
What did Frederick and... Oh, the day before.
Yeah, the day before, Frederick and Emma both lost big numbers on daily doubles, and then Elizabeth got one the next day and bet only about half of her score.
I mean, if you're down by that much, take a shot. I mean, that's what I learned from reading y'all's blog when I was... I don't mean to get in a shameless plug, but that's one thing I learned from reading y'all's blog, from reading all the boards and everything, and... Y'all know I like to play cards and play backgammon and do all that. Mm-hmm. So I guess I had that mentality. I mean, I was like, why didn't you wager more than take a shot? But I didn't think about once bitten, twice shy, because she would have been there for the Monday game when all that money was lost.
Exactly. That was a thought that crossed my mind as well. Dan, Julia, what do you guys think?
Was she wrong or right? I don't remember.
She did get the question right. It
was beats per minute, I think, BPM.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. It's tricky because there's the psychology of, if I get it wrong, am I going to feel like I can't come back? So, people say, oh, you should bet big, but bet big and you get it wrong and you're out of the game sometimes. I don't know. It's a tough call. I was never one to really go big because, sometimes it's, you go big, you go home.
Mm-hmm.
I think my as somebody who was burnt by a couple daily doubles.
Sorry, Dan.
No, it's okay. Second one, I'm gonna get grief for a while, but to be quite honest, I haven't thought of Virginia Woolf since junior year of high school. But for me myself, I think fanboyism took over a lot for me, and I was just running on adrenaline. I was just thrilled to be on the show, and as far as having a game plan, I really didn't have it. All I knew is that if I hit a daily double kind of in the first round, I wanted to go all in if I didn't have more than a certain amount of money, say $5,000 or $6,000, because there's just so much money in the second round. But at that stage, I don't know. I personally didn't really have a solid plan or strategy at all. Given how quickly the game moves, there's just not a lot of time to think. At least that's my case, anyways.
Neither, Dan.
Yeah. In certain cases, if you don't want to make it, if you want to prevent a runaway or anything like that, sure. You have certain numbers in your head, but there isn't a whole lot of time to think.
That's true.
I personally haven't been on the show, I think that yeah, that is very true. That you don't have a lot of time to think up there, and therefore maybe knowing that you can probably come up with a plan. No, or try to come up with a plan beforehand so that you can think very quickly on your feet about what you want to do, and maybe even try to practice that as you go along.
Well, didn't Roger take forever picking his daily double wagers? Like I heard he took a minute on one of them, like a solid minute.
Yeah, Roger's as cool as a cucumber, though, so he's an outlier. But the whole phenomenon of just the lights, I mean, that's a two-word shorthand for just so much of what just being on the show, the adrenaline, the excitement, the whole experience of being in front of TV in front of a million people. It just makes you do
weird things.
Weird things, exactly. Yeah. And as I said, the lights phenomenon is just so much of seeing around the board and all that. It is a real thing, and makes you do strange things.
I would say even even on smaller scales, the pressure of actually being there under the game, under the lights, can make you screw up. Now, joining us right now, coming in very shortly, welcome Alexander Perceau. He won quite a few games this past week. I guess we can now ask him what he thought. First of all, welcome. I hope your mic's working. Welcome, Alexander. Thank you for joining us. You certainly did quite well on your Monday and Tuesday games of this past week, but Wednesday kind of got away from you. What happened? Did the buzzer just kind of get away from you, or?
So. I see Dan Tran. I just want to say hi to Dan because we're in the same fellow PhD students. I would say that I was getting a little hungry by the end of the morning. It was probably about 1 p.m., 1:30 by the time we finished filming, so I think maybe that was part of the problem. But also, Mike Harwood was really good on the buzzer. We talked about it afterwards, and he has said that he was practicing and had some techniques, so that was definitely a bit of a challenge for me.
What did you eat, Alexander?
So I'd eaten breakfast that morning. I'd eaten Cheerios at about 5 a.m., and I was pretty hungry. So, yeah.
As a tip, I guess, eat before you get on the show and eat as much as you can during.
Yeah, I was eating a muffin during the show, but every time I came back down between changing my clothes, they would just grab me right away, so I couldn't eat. So
you didn't even get to sit down.
I mean, I got to sit down in the dressing room while I changed my jacket and stuff, but that's about it.
You're just gonna go.
Yeah.
I want to ask y'all, how much water did y'all drink? Because I killed like every bottle they handed me in between the breaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was not a problem.
Yeah.
It was just I devoured every small thing of water.
It's free, made well.
I usually didn't drink enough and got really dehydrated the first couple days and got a little better about drinking more as the time went on. But I never wanted to eat. I lose my appetite when I'm nervous.
So you didn't go to the commissary? Well, I guess you did go to the commissary, but you just had like a light salad or something?
Yeah, basically. I think, I have to eat something or I won't have any energy, but it was like... And I was always chatting, and Robert was always telling me I needed to eat and stop talking to the other contestants. It was
listen to him.
Not great.
I ate nothing but potato wedges my first. I was on 9 shows. My first 8, I had nothing but potato wedges in me. Y'all have heard the story before. I won't tell it again. But then I ate a piece of pizza and I lost the last one. Don't do that.
Yeah, blame.
I think there's a whole list of cursed foods. The grilled cheese sandwich is top of the list from what I've heard.
Blame Papa John's.
I was actually going to suggest from a few years an inside joke from a few years ago from the old Jeopardy boards. Faith loves tuna salad. Might also.
Okay, I thought it was grilled cheese. That was the one I was trying to think of.
Yes, the tuna salad.
Tuna salad.
Okay.
We'll explain y'all afterwards.
The cursed food.
Okay. Moving on a little bit. Friday's Final Jeopardy category, Tony nominations. My first thought when I saw that category was, oh, good heavens, I'm terrible in theater. So I guess to put it on the panel, for me personally, it might not be a bad. Like, it would probably be one of the categories that I'd seriously consider some sort of, strategy that people might not consider as orthodox. Like, okay, maybe I could bet, assuming I can get the question wrong. I guess for those of you who've been on the show, would there be any category that, like, I guess the Tony nominations for me, where it would be like, I don't think I'm going to know 10% of what they ask in this category, so I'm going to bet small. Would there be any categories like that for you guys?
Tony Awards. Absolutely. Liz would have gotten it. We were at college homecoming, and Liz, the theater major, the actress and everything. Liz, I'll ask it to you later, but I wrote someone different.
I went with the Family Feud answer and said Julie Andrews on that one, but
same here.
That was my first impulse, but wasn't she in Victor Victoria in the early 90s?
Yep.
Yep.
No, in the 80s, as a matter of fact.
It was the 80s?
So, yeah, I was walking to the
Julie
gallows.
Andrews is the answer for people who don't know anything about theater.
I mean, it makes sense because she was in My Fair Lady and Cinderella in the early 60s, so it's not like it's not a stupid guess. It was my first thought, but...
My first thought was the right response, and I changed to Julie Andrews. So, don't give it away. Don't give it away because Liz hadn't heard it yet. So.
Okay.
I majored in theater, and theater's still my worst subject on the show, but then that was like 20 years ago.
Things has changed.
Maybe you know too much, David, because that happens to me with the art questions. I overthink them.
Oh, no, it's not a case. I was 20 years old. I went, oh, theater, that sounds like a fun thing, and I never did anything with it since I graduated, so it's not a case of knowing too much, trust me. Geography is a case of knowing too much.
Yeah.
To go back to your question, Andy, I didn't bet based on category. I just bet on myself and bet to win, so...
So, I mean, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having confidence in yourself in every category they put forward for you, and so I would say, I mean, that's definitely something I would highly recommend to people, that they ignore the category and just bet based on the scores and have confidence in themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
they could always surprise you with, it could be Tony Awards and it could have nothing to do with Tony Award knowledge, yeah. So.
Oh,
exactly.
Boo. Guy named Tony who won an award.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it past
cool.
him. I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Well, I mean, a couple weeks ago when Alex DeFrank was on here with his Sports Jeopardy episode, they gave him, I mean, the category was about people named Alex, and they just, I mean, he thought he'd know everything about it, and it ended up being some obscure NBA coach he hadn't remembered, so you never know what it could be. Now, I have a couple of questions now at this point for the various contestants we had or who've been on recently. First up, I think, Dan, how did you feel about your first interview going viral?
The elephant in the room, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It didn't really bother me too much. I guess the worst part of it was that I did not want to be known just for that. I mean, I did end up surviving the game against Shane, the Doombringer.
Yeah.
I think really what I took not so well was if there's anything that was if there's any sort of criticism as to dumb answers or why I didn't know something or why I bet a certain amount for whatever, that's that's stuff that I take to heart more than telling some dumb story that.
Yeah.
So I mean the whole thing with that story, I mean, I knew it was bad. I saw one of the producers, I forgot who, showed me. It was like the highlighted one. I looked at this card. And was thinking, well, this is not even close to any of the 5 things I wrote about myself. It was somewhere else on the contestants forum. But like, I mean, I'm not going to blame them because part of it was my fault. I was just not ready for it. And I mean, I guess what just happened was I just thought, okay, I looked at it, was like, hey, I can totally run with this, and I can totally talk about this, it'll be fine, without speaking up and changing it into something different. Because I looked at this, I was like, this is not that important or interesting or anything. But then that happened. My brother was sitting in the audience. When we both left, he was just like, it was bad. I was like, oh, I know it was. Morale was low after that point, but thankfully I calmed down a little bit over time. But I was not expecting all that to happen, and before you know it, I'm everywhere. I guess the final straw is being on the soup. The following Wednesday night.
I forgot about that.
But
That's awkward.
for the week. Yeah, one of my best friends, he texted me, telling me that his family saw me on the soup, and I was like, what? Like, are you kidding me? But I survived.
Yeah.
No one's gonna remember who I am after a few days, so we're okay.
Well, at least you can console yourself that there's a portion of Jeopardy viewers who always zap the interviews anyways. So
Yeah.
not me.
I mean, admittedly, when I watch Jeopardy episodes I miss, I usually skip through the interviews. No hard feelings to anybody. I just I don't really watch Jeopardy for that. But
Some people watch Jeopardy for nothing but that.
As evidenced by the Twitter account, Cool Jeopardy Stories. But
Yeah, cool Jeff stories.
that is a great Twitter account, I feel.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I know I mentioned this before we went on the air, but now that we are on the air, I think your reaction to that whole thing and all of what everybody said, including Joel, McHale, et al., I think it was very classy and very, very cool. And
Yeah, I mean, it's just I didn't want to sound bitter about it or anything like that. I mean, I just really appreciated everybody just kind of seeing the positive in it, and none of it actually takes away from the experience, which is like a dream experience for me. I've been trying for so long to get on. I've been taking the online test since it was a thing, and everything just fell into place in a matter of this year. That was great. And to whoever it was that, well, I think the harshest bit of criticism was I read somewhere, maybe a certain site that all of you are familiar with, but they said that they had a hard time believing that I passed the test to get on the show. Well, I did, so whatever.
A lot of sour grapes on that website. It's been like.
Yeah, that was weird. I did keep track of my scores, kind of for the last 2 weeks of episodes, just to see how well I would have done. And lo and behold, 2 of my 3 worst scores were the 2 episodes that I played on, like kind of scoring harshly against me. So, I mean, a lot of it was also luck. I did really well. The categories that Alexandra got, or John even after me, John Campbell, who won 2 games, the romance novelist, also for Mass. I did pretty well on some of those categories. Though my favorite category personally was the Civil War that I won. Confederacy of Dunces, but I
didn't like that because they called Confederates dunces, and we won't.
No, that's fair.
Person who says the war between the states on air and managed to see. I feel as though that upset a few people, from what I remember, but.
I didn't go on Twitter about it or anything. I said that y'all know I said that to keep the clock moving, but we won't get into that.
So, my next question, I guess to all the contestants who've been on the show, going into your first appearances, what did you study beforehand, and would you do anything different in hindsight after having been through your episodes?
Silence.
What did so you didn't still say?
Okay, I guess I'll go. Well, yeah. It's just actually didn't really. I'm a grad student. I don't really have time to study which was kind of my other downfall, I guess. I did. I think the last thing I did. I'm on Sporkle.com a lot. I feel like that website's pretty awesome for especially geography-related things, history-related things, a lot of sports-related things. So I was doing a lot of that kind of the week before, but the night before I did no studying, or in the green room or whatever, or the morning of I didn't do any studying because at that point it's do or die. And I was one of the first people drawn for that taping, which also kind of freaked me out. I kind of at least wanted to watch a game or two before, but first two names, Amanda and Dan, to face Shane. That was that also added to the nerve wreckness. That's not even a word. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Alexander? What did I mean? You're a PhD student, so you probably also didn't have much time to study, but.
Well, I was going to say, because I am a PhD student, I can set my own schedule, so that was the positive side of it. So I definitely spent a lot of time on Sporkle as well, and tried to brush up on categories like a lot of movies, things like that I'm not as good on.
Yeah.
I mined the J archive quite a bit, so played a lot of games, and I would constantly refresh it so I would practice final daily doubles.
Yeah.
But also because I'm an economist, I spoke to my advisor about optimal Final Jeopardy bets.
Yeah.
So that was something I actually took probably more seriously than maybe other people did. So I thought about that quite a bit, and thinking about the ranges in which to bet and where I should bet depending on where I was.
Though, of course, you ended up in a couple of situations where you didn't really have to worry too much about what to bet because you were in a couple of lock games.
Yeah. But the first game, I think if I hadn't thought that through, I would have bet really poorly, and I would have ended up losing. So, paid off.
Yes, it did. Let me think. Yes, actually, you did your bet of 7,000. Actually, was, I would say, probably quite excellent, and ended up, especially after John and even Sarah probably bet a little bit too much than they should have. So yeah, I guess we can just take this, if you're watching this never having been on the show before, I guess look at your wagering, and it's quite important. It can turn losses into wins for you. Speaking of wagering, looking forward, it looks like we have 9 contestants this week, if that may be a spoiler alert for lots of ties.
Lots of ties.
Lots of ties, yes. Apparently that would be multiple ties. And so, of course, I think it's a subject that I have nearly talked out on the panel, and thanks to our good friend Keith, who has, while he is yet to appear on this YouTube channel, he has his own, and where he seems to quite enjoy.
He wants to be in a panel. I'll get him eventually.
Oh, get him here, yes.
I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that.
You know what? You know what's going to be great? The fact that we have so many ties happening that by the time Keith actually makes it onto our panel, I probably will have enough data to determine empirically whether betting for the tie is a good idea or not. So I'm quite looking forward to that.
Notice how I'm shaking my head left and right? I talked about this last week at length, so I'm going to quit.
That's why I said I think it's already been talked out on the panel. And
yes, indeed.
Yes. Now, a couple of questions, because this is Julia's first time, and I want. How much did you get recognized on the street after you were on the show?
Very, very little. Almost never. Someone said they recognized my voice, though, over the summer, which really surprised me.
Okay.
I'm really... I don't... I mean, it's not that I don't look like I do on the show, but I kind of don't. You know, I don't have my hair the same way. I'm very casual. I was wearing sunglasses. It was... I was kind of surprised, but I realized recently that people that I know, like, more casually, like, merchants at places that I shop and stuff, like, that I realized that, like, at the jewelry store where I go to get stuff repaired, I went to get an extender for my necklace before Tournament of Champions, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be on TV. And they were like, oh, yeah, we've been so excited about it, because they were like, they never said anything. They know me. But I guess people know, and they just are being polite. But I don't think people recognize me walking down the street.
Okay.
Not.
You said they start being polite. Were they not polite before, or what is the?
I don't know. They were just too polite to, I think, call me out on it. So I don't know.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again on here. Jeopardy people are very nice folk, so polite and non-assuming. Even Jeopardy fans, not just Jeopardy contestants. Jeopardy fans.
I would say most Jeopardy fans are very
yeah. That's right. We know what there. You're right. I should have qualified that. Yeah.
I mean, and I live in a pretty small community where I've lived my whole life, and I was in a lot of local, like the local paper, and so it's not like out of left field, but I think people just don't say anything, not to make a thing out of it. That's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah. Now, another question, Julia. What studying did you do, specifically for the Tournament of Champions? Did you do any specific studying for that?
Yeah, I'm a pretty bad studier, is what I've learned. I don't have a really good handle on how to tap into the way my memory works, which is I have good immediate recall and good long-term memory, but that kind of middle ground is apparently really poor. And when I was on the show initially, 90 or 95% of the questions or clues I responded to correctly were things I just knew or could figure out. So all the studying that I did was, I wouldn't say it was for naught. There'd be maybe one question per game, maybe two that I get from studying. But I read through lists of Nobel Prize winners, Pulitzer winners. For the TOC, I focused a little more on Oscar winners since I feel a lot of shame for missing that last Final Jeopardy. Although I would have lost anyway, so it doesn't keep me up at night. But I tried to alternate between more discrete topics like Nobel Prize winners and kind of broader subject areas. I had a big long list. Like everybody else, I looked at the J Archive. Before I went on initially, I did some geography quizzes on Sporkle to get a little better handle on some of that, and I didn't really do anything different than anybody else, so that sounds like other people really have a much more effective time with their studying than I did. So I'm a little jealous of that, their ability to remember things.
You may have had a more effective time, but you had the best results.
It's true. Yeah, I thought I could learn about wagering, and then I thought, I don't want to get in my head and psych myself out, so I didn't really bother with that beforehand. I don't know, I really was going by the seat of my pants. But, I was...
all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I know, right? I have to say Daily Doubles strike fear in my heart every single time. I didn't feel like a deer in the headlights anytime except when I hit a daily double, which is why I think I had a pretty poor correct response percentage, because I didn't have that feeling any other time except the daily doubles. But I don't know. It's different things work for different people, and I just tried to stay relaxed, and that was what worked for me, since I couldn't really call things out of thin air. As Jeannie and Ben know, I think I was pretty sick at the tournament, and I'd been even sicker for the week beforehand, and had planned to do some last-minute studying, in the week leading up to the tournament. But really, I was on the couch with my eyes closed the entire time, so I wasn't really doing much. And then it was kind of a bum break. Although I'm still sick, so it's something weird going on. I don't know.
Okay, and I guess of the other 14 contestants going into the tournament, I know this is probably going to be an awkward question, but who were you most afraid of?
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Who else was at the tournament?
I wasn't afraid of anybody. I don't know. There's this weird, this adversarial idea that some people have about the show either. I mean, that's not how I've ever felt about it, and certainly not how I felt about the tournament. I felt like I was going to summer camp, and that was. I don't know. I felt like it was. I mean, as friendly and nice as everybody is when you're on the show in the regular season, I feel like there's a lot of camaraderie. People are really friendly. You either know each other, like some people had met. Ben, you knew Mark. I had met Sandy before. Knew each other a little bit from Twitter. Other people knew each other. It's fun. I wasn't afraid of anybody. That's so crazy. It's a game show. It's a game. Like, what's the point? So.
Friendly people, contestant.
Ben, what do you think?
I think that I had no idea what Souchong was.
Souchong.
Souchong. Liz, did you know what Souchong was? Yeah, she goes the tea. Oh, that's right. She used to work to the tea shop. So.
I didn't. I reasoned that one out myself. Looking at it, it's like, Souchong. That sounds like tea. I've never had it myself. I'm more of a pu'er fan, tea-wise, but I guess yes. 12 cases of Souchong they lost, I believe, in the Boston Tea Party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've got to ask Alexander if he knew what Souchong was.
No, I
knew it.
What day's game was that?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Let me find out. It's
that was last Tuesday. It was a week ago today.
There
Tuesday.
it is.
A week ago today.
12 chests of Souchong. I'm just looking at the archive right now.
Yeah.
Boxes in this event included 12 chests of Souchong. And
You got the lock anyways.
you know what Souchong is, that helps you. And I don't.
Oh.
Well, I would say, to be honest, I think chests of was more the clue than it was more of a clue than actual Souchong.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the category, 18th century.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
what
then
gave it to me.
chest got me thinking, treasure chest, pirate chest, sunken treasure. I didn't think anyone knew that, but I don't know, maybe it's because I'm Canadian and I don't...
I was about to say it's because you're Canadian.
You're Canadian too, Andy.
Y'all are subjects. No, I'm kidding. Y'all got a very nice queen and so on and so forth.
Who's apparently on Twitter now.
Yeah, she sent a tweet. It was hilarious.
Okay, I think we've been on the air a good 30 to 35 minutes, so I think it's... Before I go, I should say I don't see any questions for the panel in my email that's sent to me from either YouTube or the blog, so I think I am safe on that point, but do any of the panelists have any other questions for any of the other panelists before we log off for another week?
Well, now that we have Julia on, it's something that I've always wondered. Your playing style is so different from other long-term runners like Arthur Chu, Ken Jennings, Dave Madden. You could really tell that they have a really different playing style. They know where to look on the board. They strategize where to go in the lower half to maximize the daily doubles. And yours was just more of what we see from ordinary players, and yet you parlayed that into a 21-game streak. How do you think that managed? How do you think that your different playing style got extended for so long?
When you have control of the board, you have control of the board. When you're the one that rings in first and gets the clue correct, you're the one in charge, and it doesn't matter if you jump around or what you're doing. And when you hit the daily doubles early in the round, you remove some of their power. So, I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily... It's a strategy. It's a perfectly valid strategy. I didn't care. I certainly didn't hit as many daily doubles as percentage-wise as Arthur did, and obviously nobody did anything as many times as Ken. But it didn't really matter. if you're not the one answering correctly, you're not the one in charge.
So is answering correctly more dependent on your knowledge or your buzzer speed? Which would you say was more important?
I mean, you can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could have. You can buzz in first and not be right. That's certainly not going to help you. I mean, you just have to be. Yeah, you have to have both. I mean, this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if you're not good at the buzzer, well, if nobody, if all three contestants know the right response, being fastest is important. If you're the only one that knows it, then it's not as important. And there's always a mix. That's how it is on the show always, and that's what makes it fun. That's what keeps it interesting.
I guess a couple things I'd like to know, excuse me, if time permits, excuse me, from our two future PhDs, who both look like they're still at work, by the way.
That's exactly where I am.
Just if time permits, Andy, I guess, but what were some of y'all's favorite gets? Because y'all had some good ones. What were some of y'all's favorite correct responses?
What was that?
He was asking what your favorite correct responses were in your respective appearances on the show.
Oh, my personal favorites was Jeb Stuart and Jubal Early, the two Civil War generals.
Those were good ones.
Did you have facial recognition on those, or was it the clues?
I happen to be kind of a Civil War buff. Most people wouldn't assume that from looking at me and knowing that I'm a physics guy, but I've seen my fair share of Civil War movies, and I remember screaming in my head Antietam as, I knew the double category as well.
We call it Sharpsburg.
Yeah, no, literally a week before, one of my friends was at Antietam, the battlefield, and I told him, that people in the South call it Sharpsburg, and so those are my personal favorites.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was done.
I was just saying the day before I tried out, we drove through the Shenandoah and we stopped at Harper's Ferry, so it's highly recommended if you haven't been.
Yeah.
And what about you, Alexander? What were some of your favorite correct responses?
In my study of the J archive and in playing games with my girlfriend and just studying, I kept coming across a question under like famous African Americans or explorers, which is this African American went and had an Inuit family, and it's Matthew Henson, and it kept coming up over and over and over and over. So I was really happy that I got to ring in. It was something that I studied and I learned. So that was my favorite. That was by far my favorite response.
Okay.
Don't you love when you're watching at home and then you find out the contestants' favorite gets are also your favorite gets?
Oh.
But those are my favorites of y'all, is Jubal Early and Matthew Henson. So I win the brass ring.
Yeah. I think so. So I think just about time for us to log off for another week. There's a baseball game starting in about 10 minutes.
I knew you were going to want to be done by baseball time.
Yes. Jeannie wants to watch the baseball. I want to watch the baseball. It could be the last one of the season, so...
Yeah.
At this point, I'd like to thank all of our panelists once again. Jeannie didn't cut out that much. You got through it.
Yeah.
Yay. Julia, thank you very much for coming. Best of retroactive luck in the Tournament of Champions, which airs in a couple weeks. I hope you still did okay in spite of your being apparently sick.
I hope you come back for the chat after the tournament too.
I think we'd love to have you once the tournament's finished. And also thanks once again to David, also Ben, Dan, and Alexander. Once again, I'm Andy Saunders for the JeopardyFan.com. Thank you very much for tuning in. We should be back at some point in the middle of next week for episode live panel number 11. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great night.